Okay, so this time around, we're diving into something that's becoming more and more prevalent in our daily lives. I'm talking about contactless payments. I mean, think about it using our phones, smartwatches, even those little key fobs at coffee shops. It's all tap and go these days, right?
Mhm.
But I have a feeling you're not just here for a rundown of how convenient it is.
Definitely not.
Right. You want to know what could potentially go wrong?
Exactly.
The security risks that might be lurking beneath the surface.
Yeah, because we're talking about systems that are designed with security in mind. But as any security expert will tell you, no system is perfect.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here to uncover in this deep dive. So we've got a stack of articles, some pretty technical stuff.
Yeah.
But we're going to break it down, make it digestible. By the end of this, you'll practically have an honorary cybersecurity degree.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Or at least a really good understanding.
Right. So where do we even begin?
Well, there's this article from HackMag, First Contact, Attacks Against Contactless Cards. It's a great starting point because it not just talks about the technology, but also how people are actually exploiting it.
Oh, perfect. So no more tech jargon without real-world context.
Yeah, exactly.
Hit me with it then. What's the first vulnerability that has you concerned?
Let's talk about legacy modes.
Hmm.
So even with all the advancements in payment technology, there are these fallback options built into systems like Visa and MasterCard.
Okay.
And they're basically there for older payment terminals that don't support the latest security standards, for backwards compatibility.
I see.
The problem is researchers have found that some banks are still relying on these legacy modes, even for transactions with newer devices like our smartphones.
Wait, so you're saying that my phone, with all its fancy security features,
Yeah.
could be forced to use, like, outdated security protocols just because the bank system hasn't caught up?
That's essentially what's happening.
That seems like kind of a big deal.
It is a big deal, and the First Contact article actually goes into detail about researchers who were able to read magstripe data through NFC because of these legacy modes. So imagine it's like having a state-of-the-art security system for your house, but you leave the back door unlocked.
Oh, that's a scary thought. See, this is why I use cash.
You know, it's funny you should say that because
I'm kidding.
it's all about being aware, right? But moving on, sometimes the weakest link in all of this isn't the technology itself,
Oh.
but us, the humans using it. Attackers are very clever, and they often target our behaviors, our assumptions, rather than trying to brute force their way through the tech.
So it's more about social engineering than, like, hardcore hacking.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
Take PIN bypasses, for example.
Yeah.
The article talks about how an attacker, using a compromised terminal, can actually switch the verification method from PIN to signature right when you're about to enter your PIN.
Really?
Subtle but effective.
Wow. So you don't even realize you're being tricked.
Yeah, especially if you're not paying close attention or in a rush.
It makes you wonder what other subtle tactics they're using.
Oh, there are plenty. Another one is transaction stream fraud. This is where the attacker actually intercepts the data flowing between the payment terminal and the bank.
Hold on. So even if my phone and the bank are communicating securely, they can still mess with the data in between.
That's the gist of it. They could potentially change the amount the recipient, all while the data is in transit.
That's insane. It's like intercepting a letter and changing the contents before it reaches its destination.
Exactly. And the article mentions a real-world case involving Brazilian hackers who successfully pulled off this type of attack.
See, this is the stuff that keeps me up at night. But speaking of things that sound like they're straight out of a spy movie, let's talk about those regulations that are supposed to make things more secure. You mentioned something about PSD2 regulations in Europe, right?
Right, so PSD2 introduced things like cumulative spending limits for contactless payments
Yeah.
to add an extra layer of security.
So, like, after you spend a certain amount, you have to enter your PIN.
Exactly. For example, in the UK, it's £225.
Yeah.
Hit that limit, you need your PIN.
That makes sense.
Seems foolproof, right?
Yeah, you would think so.
Well, not quite. Researchers found that these cumulative limits can actually be reset by attackers.
Wait, reset? How is that even possible?
That's what I thought. But they can do it through compromised terminals. It's basically tricking the system into thinking you've only spent a tiny amount, even if you've already gone way past the limit.
So they're basically exploiting a loophole in the system designed to protect us.
It seems that way. Which just goes to show that even with the best intentions, security is an ongoing battle. But since we're on the topic of specific systems, you mentioned being interested in Apple Pay earlier.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's my go-to for pretty much everything these days.
We have an article here titled, How Apple Pay Works Under the Hood. Maybe you can give us some insights into how they approach security.
Perfect. Let's see what kind of digital fortress they've built around my transactions.
One of the key security features of Apple Pay is something called tokenization. It's
Hmm.
all about protecting your actual card information. Instead of your actual credit card number being stored on your phone
Yeah.
or transmitted during a transaction, Apple Pay uses a unique token.
Okay, so it's like a stand-in for my real card detail.
Exactly. It's kind of like those valet tickets you get when you park your car.
I see.
You don't hand over your car's registration papers, just a unique identifier.
Okay, so even if someone got access to my phone data, they wouldn't actually have my card number.
Right. And it gets even better. Your actual card details aren't even stored on Apple's servers. They use something called a secure element, which is a special chip inside your iPhone to handle all the payment information. It's like a mini vault within your phone, and you need your fingerprint or Face ID to unlock it.
Wow, they're really pulling out all the stops, huh?
They are. But even with all these security measures, no system is entirely foolproof. And that brings us back to those wearable hacks we were talking about earlier. What happens when our watches and fitness trackers become our payment methods?
That notable hacks and security vulnerabilities involving wearable devices article had me shook.
Right. Some of those examples sound like something straight out of a spy movie.
Yeah, like the thing about eavesdropping on motion sensors. I mean, come on.
That one's particularly interesting, right? We usually think of those sensors as tracking our steps or sleep, but they can be used for much more than that.
So you're saying my fitness tracker could be used to spy on my every move?
Not exactly your every move, but researchers have found that the subtle movements you make while typing on a keyboard or keypad, even entering a PIN, can be captured by motion sensors.
No way. Seriously.
With sophisticated algorithms, attackers can potentially figure out what you've typed, including sensitive information like PNINs or passwords.
Okay, now that's just creepy, like Mission Impossible level stuff. Is this a widespread problem, though?
Not yet, but it's a vulnerability that security researchers are actively looking into. Awareness is key here. Just knowing about these kinds of exploits helps us take steps to protect ourselves. And speaking of awareness, let's talk about Bluetooth vulnerabilities. Remember Blueborn?
Dearborn, yeah. Vaguely rings a bell.
It was a big deal back in 2017. Researchers found a whole bunch of Bluetooth vulnerabilities, collectively called Blueborn, that could have let attackers take control of devices without users even knowing.
Oh, right. I remember that now. I think I frantically updated all my devices back then.
Exactly. And that brings up a really important point. Keeping your software up to date is crucial. It's not just about getting the latest features. It's about patching those security holes that attackers could potentially exploit.
It's like they always say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Except in this case, it's updating your software. But even if we're good about updates, there are still things like those NFC relay attacks to worry about.
Yeah, those are pretty wild.
It sounds so sci-fi, though. Attackers stealing payment information wirelessly.
It does, doesn't it? But it basically plays on the fact that NFC requires close proximity.
Right.
Attackers can use special equipment to essentially relay the NFC signal over a greater distance.
Hold on. So someone could theoretically make a purchase with my smartwatch without even being near me, like from across the street.
That's the basic idea.
Yeah.
They set up a relay between your device and the payment terminal, tricking both into thinking they're right next to each other.
Okay. That's both ingenious and terrifying at the same time. It's a good thing I'm already a little paranoid.
Yes.
So with all these vulnerabilities we've uncovered, should we all just ditch our contactless devices and go back to cash?
It's all about understanding the risks and making informed decisions. We didn't abandon online banking just because of hackers.
That's true. We adapted, learned to protect ourselves, and now look at us, depositing checks from our couches.
Exactly.
So instead of swearing off contactless payments, what can we do? What are some practical steps to stay ahead of the game?
Well, for starters, trust your instincts.
Okay.
If something feels off about a payment terminal, the person using it, even just the overall vibe, don't hesitate to use a different payment method.
Okay, so if I see someone at the ATM wearing a tinfoil hat, I should probably just come back later.
Maybe not that extreme.
Got
But yeah, you get the idea. Trust your gut. If something feels suspicious, it's better to be safe than sorry.
Got it. What about things we can do proactively to amp up our security? Even when things seem fine, I mean...
Strong passwords are a must. And make sure your phone or smartwatch locks automatically after a short period of inactivity.
Right, those few seconds could be crucial.
Absolutely.
You mentioned transaction limits earlier. Should we be tweaking those too?
Definitely. Most banks let you set limits on your contactless transactions. It can really help to minimize your risk. Just an extra layer of security and peace of mind.
Okay, transaction limits checked. What else?
Don't forget about good old-fashioned vigilance.
Me.
Review your bank statements. I know it's tempting to let them pile up, but it's important to catch any unauthorized charges early on.
It's true. I'm guilty of that myself. Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Exactly. And, another thing that often gets overlooked is using a credit card instead of a debit card for contactless payments.
Oh, yeah. Why is that?
Credit cards usually have better fraud protection. If there is an unauthorized purchase, you're not immediately out that money like you would be with a debit card. Plus, credit card companies have whole teams dedicated to investigating fraud. So you have experts on your side.
That does make me feel a bit better. So even though we've uncovered some pretty scary vulnerabilities, it's not all doom and gloom. There are ways to protect ourselves. But do you think with all these risks, contactless is really the way of the future? I mean, what do you think?
It's hard to say for sure. It's a bit like the Wild West out there right now. New technologies emerging faster than we can secure them.
True.
But that's how innovation works, isn't it? We adapt, we learn, we create better, more secure systems. Personally, I think contactless payments are here to stay. The convenience factor is just too great.
That makes sense. I guess it's like anything new, there are going to be growing pains. But as long as we stay informed and adapt our security habits, we can minimize those risks and enjoy the convenience.
Absolutely. And remember, security is a journey, not a destination. As technology evolves, so will the threats, but also the ways we protect ourselves.
Yeah.
There are some incredible advancements happening right now. Biometric authentication, artificial intelligence, things that will play a huge role in the future of payments.
Wow, when you put it that way, it's actually pretty exciting. Like we're on the verge of a whole new era.
We are.
But no matter how much technology changes, knowledge will always be our best defense.
Couldn't agree more.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about, and I bet it has for our listeners too.
Yeah,
Yeah, is like we're always going to have to be one step ahead.
that's the name of the game.
Right. So with all that in mind, what can we as everyday consumers really do to make sure we're not sitting ducks?
Honestly, a lot of it comes down to common sense. Be aware of your surroundings. If something feels off about a payment terminal or the person using it, just walk away.
Okay, so if I see someone at an ATM with a ski mask in the middle of summer.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to trust your gut.
Trust my gut, got it. What about more like preventative measures, things we can do before we even get to that point?
Strong passwords. Can't stress that enough. Make sure your phone or smartwatch locks automatically when you're not using it.
Right, because those few seconds of being unlocked could be all it takes.
Exactly.
And you mentioned earlier about setting transaction limit.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. Most banks let you set a limit on how much you can spend before you need to enter your PI.
Okay, so strong passwords, auto-lock transaction limits. Anything I'm missing?
Keep an eye on your bank statements. It's easy to just let them pile up.
Oh, tell me about it.
But that's how you miss unauthorized charges. Make it a habit to review them regularly.
Okay, we'll do this. You also briefly touched on using a credit card versus a debit card. Is there a big difference when it comes to contactless?
There can be. Credit cards often have better fraud protection. So if someone does make an unauthorized purchase, you're not immediately out that money. And credit card companies are usually pretty good about investigating fraudulent charges. So you have a whole team on your side.
Okay, good to know. So yeah, it sounds like we've covered a lot of ground here. It's been enlightening, but also a little bit unnerving, to be honest.
It's a balancing act, isn't it?
It really is. But hopefully our listeners are walking away from this with a better understanding of the risks and, most importantly, how to stay safe. So thanks again for joining me on this deep dive. It's always a pleasure picking your brain.
Anytime.
And to everyone listening out there, stay curious, stay informed. Until next time, stay safe.